It is almost time for the 2022 NHL Draft. So for today, we're going to complete our final mock draft of the season, going through all 32 picks in the first round. And that's coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we're completing our mock draft for the 2022 draft that's coming up here very shortly. We're going to go through the first round and go over all 32 selections. So now we're going to hop onto the computer, go through each one pick at a time. I'll give you my thoughts, and then we'll go through and recap here at the end. First overall, we have the Montreal Canadiens. I know there's been a debate over this, but I still say they go with Shane Wright. He's been arguably the top prospect for this draft class for several months, in fact years. Solid two-way center with a lot of potential offensive upside. I really think that they're going to go here with Wright at this position. I know there's some that think Slafkovsky is the pick, and maybe they prove us wrong. But right now, Shane Wright is definitely the guy. They want the best player, not only today, but the best player when he's 22, 23 years old. And I think Wright has the potential to be that player. Selecting at number 2, we have the New Jersey Devils, and I have them taking Jerard Fagerberg. There's a lot of speculation that the Devils are really, really high on this player, and if they're convinced that Montreal wants him at number 1, then they might try to swing a trade. There's been lots of rumors around that. Obviously, this guy has the size, the goal-scoring ability, arguably the most NHL-ready right off the bat. He had one heck of a year between all different levels, juniors, world championships, Olympics, regular season stuff. Like, this guy has been a phenomenal season and is ready for the NHL, in my opinion, right away. At number 3, we have the Arizona Coyotes, and I have them selecting U.S. center Logan Cooley. Cooley's arguably in the conversation for the top 3 spots. One of the top 2 teams could shock us here and take him sooner than this, but the Coyotes, in my opinion, will definitely select him, assuming he's available at number 3. Really creative player. Obviously, going to drive a lot of offense, and it makes sense for them as well. He's going to play U.S. college hockey, which he could probably do for a couple of years as they continue to navigate through this rebuild and work towards their new arena that they're trying to get situated in Tempe. Selecting at number 4, we have the Seattle Kraken, and I have them taking arguably the best defenseman on the draft, David Jiricek. Now, this guy has some size, 6'3", 176 pounds, right shot defenseman from the Czech Republic. Craig Button recently referred to him as a slightly lighter version of Moritz Seider. We've seen what he accomplished in Detroit this year. He's got a solid play at both ends of the ice. The Kraken really need a bit of everything here, so they're definitely going with best player available. And with those other 3 elite level talents off the board, Jiricek should be their guy. Selecting at 5, we have the Philadelphia Flyers, and I have them taking another U.S.-born player, Cutter Gauthier. The U.S. players are going to dominate the first round of this draft, no doubt. Gauthier is a fast riser in this first round, and will certainly end up going here much higher than many thought he would originally. He's got the size, 6'3", 190 pounds, plays a power forward style of game. Originally, most consider him to be a winger, but he is going to be developing as a center, playing college hockey at Boston College. He had a chance to play a bit of center before and really thrived at it. And it looks like he could be a real big, strong power forward center, which is right up Philly's alley in their style of play. Selecting at number 6, we have the Columbus Blue Jackets, and I have them taking the next best defenseman in the draft, Simon Nemec. Now, Nemec's one of those players that just does all the little things right. May not be like a flashy player, but the Slovakian defenseman really gets the job done up there. He's not huge, but he's 6'1", 192. I'm sure he's going to continue to grow and fill out a little bit more. But he just does everything really, really well, both ends of the ice. And with Columbus luckily looking for a top defensive prospect, it only makes sense here. I know improving their blue line makes a ton of sense here after some of their recent high picks like Sillinger and Johnson. Some dynamic forwards already in the mix there in Columbus. At number 7, we have the Ottawa Senators selecting next, and I have them taking from the Winnipeg Ice, Matthew Savoie. Now, Savoie is a player at one point was in a conversation for probably being a top couple picks in this draft. He has slipped some even have him going a little lower than this. But to me, I think he's a great option here for the Ottawa Senators. He's not overly huge, 5'9", 178. He's listed as a center, but I have a feeling he may end up playing as a right winger in the NHL. Would be a terrific fit. They really need another right wing top 6 player who could play on a line with Timmy Stützle, and he has the offensive dynamics to really be a complementary player in that role, in my opinion. At number 8, we have the Detroit Red Wings selecting next, and I have them taking Marco Kasper, the Austrian forward. Left shot is kind of a sneaky good pick here for Steve Yzerman. He just screams Yzerman to me when you learn more about this player. He's one of those kind of guys who doesn't get a lot of attention being from Austria, didn't really get a ton on the international stage because overall the team wasn't overly strong, but certainly a player who has a really fast motor, high compete level, goes to the front of the net, has really good skill, just does a lot of really things right, and he may not necessarily be a first-line player, but he can certainly be a middle six complementary asset, which bodes well with what they're building in Detroit. Selecting 9th overall, we have the Buffalo Sabres, and we have them selecting Finnish forward Joakim Kemell. Now, he's a player who's a pure shooter. He shoots well, he shoots hard, and he shoots a lot. Volume shooter is a good way to describe him, but he's certainly a great skater as well. Has some other dynamics to his game. Certainly at one point he did draw some comparison to the shot of Alex Ovechkin. I know that's a bit of a stretch, but that's what some scouts were saying he could shoot that well. To me, with what Buffalo has, they have a variety of good prospects in their system, and he could be an excellent piece to add to the mix here. Next up, we have the Anaheim Ducks, and we have them taking left shot defenseman from Saskatchewan and the WHL Seattle Thunderbirds, Kevin Korchinski. Now, Korchinski is a really smart defenseman, does a lot of things well. Certainly, he's got good size, like I said, 6'2", 175, but doesn't play an overly physical style of game. It's something that he could certainly add a little bit more to it, but he does all the other little things well. Just a really smart defenseman, good first pass, going to chip in on some offense as well, and should be a solid top forward D-man if he projects like he has been here so far in his young career. Selecting 11th overall, we have the San Jose Sharks, and we have them selecting Swedish-born right winger Jonathan Lekkerimäki, 5'11", 172. He's certainly a bit of a pretty good shooter, but has also developed into a decent setup man as well. So certainly rounding out his overall offensive skills. Certainly would be a good San Jose pick. Likely needs some time. May even stay over in Europe for another season, or he could play in the American Hockey League. But to me, he projects as a decent top, maybe middle six forward for the Sharks in a few years' time. Selecting 12th overall, we have the Columbus Blue Jackets with their second pick in this first round, and I have them taking Connor Geekie, the big centerman from Winnipeg in the WHL. Certainly, I think he might go as high as this, mainly due to the fact that he's such a big, strong centerman. They're hard to come by. He's 6'4", 205 pounds. Certainly very noticeable on 5-on-5 and on the power play. Benefited from having some really solid teammates this year, but he's as a dominant player at the junior level. Makes a lot of great plays. High-end skating for a big guy as well. Good puck skills, and just really projects to be that potential power forward dominant center, likely in the number 2 role, I would think, at the NHL level. Selecting 13th overall, we have the New York Islanders, and I have them taking Russian-born defenseman Pavel Mitnikov. Of course, has been playing in the OHL for Saginaw as a left-shot defenseman who has a lot of offensive abilities here. He's a great skater, rushes the puck well, good shot, distributes the puck well. Certainly, like most young D, could probably stand to improve a bit on the defensive end, and that's bound to be a big adjustment for a lot of these defensemen as they have an NHL opportunity down the road. Of course, he's got a highly competitive person as well. You certainly saw him play with a bit of a chip on our shoulder after getting snubbed from the Russian World Junior team, and I expect him to continue developing. Likely plays another year at junior before making the jump here. Next up, we have the Winnipeg Jets, obviously selecting at number 14, and we have them taking another U.S.-born player, Frank Nazar. Now, Nazar is a right winger, 5'11", 175, so he's not overly huge, but he's got a ton of offensive ability. He will be playing at the University of Michigan, so it'll be a bit of a wait for him to possibly make the jump, but that's okay because I think he needs the time to develop as well. But he's a great skater. His motor's relentless. He can certainly reach top speed quickly and has a ton of great stick handling and puck skills, which I think will dazzle the Jets fans here for many years to come. I think he'll be a great fit with some of the other younger prospects they've drafted recently. At number 15, we have the Vancouver Canucks, and we have them taking a Swedish center iceman, Noah Oslund. Of course, they've had a great deal of success in the past here with Swedes, as we know, and I think they'll continue that here with the left shot centerman. Not overly big, 5'10", 163. Of course, their use of a similar body build here from at least Pettersson, of course, except he's taller, but a leaner kind of player for sure. Osterlund's more of a playmaking type of center, not as huge of a scorer, but real good with the puck and good passing skills. Certainly a really good skater as well. Not really well equipped to go into the corners and do a lot of board battles at this point, so he certainly needs to add some strength and some muscle, I think, to adapt to the NHL game, but certainly a real smart, promising centerman here for Vancouver. At number 16, we have the Buffalo Sabres, and we have them selecting Russian-born player Danila Yurov. Now, I think Yurov would likely go higher if this wasn't for the Russian factor, but we know teams are a little skeptical and nervous around some of these players based on what we've heard and seen in the world here recently. But he can play a big, heavy, powerful game. There's certainly no discussion as to whether or not he'll be a center or a winger. I think we know he's going to be a right winger for sure at the NHL level. He's got a good shot, and I think it's a matter of time before he makes the jump. But he could be a player the Sabres have to wait a few years for, and that's fine. They have multiple first-round picks, so I think they're a team who can afford to take the chance to wait a little while. Selecting at 17, we have the Nashville Predators, and we have them taking defenseman Denton Mateychuk, who was a left shot D, Manitoba-born, played his junior hockey in the WHL for the Moose Jaw Warriors. Certainly among the top scoring defensemen in the WHL this past season. He's not overly huge, 5'11", 186, but he does defend well, uses a long stick, moves the puck well, certainly plays the power play as well. Really smart player, reads the play well, moves the puck quickly, quick feet, good acceleration, good skater. Lots to like here. Certainly going to need some time to develop at one of the more interesting D-men in this draft. At the number 18 selection, we have the Dallas Stars, and we have them taking a D-man here in Owen Pickering, who's a Manitoba-born D, played for Swift Current Broncos of the WHL, left shot defenseman. He's a really big guy, 6'5", but only 178, so a little bit on the lean side. This pick might be deemed by some to be a tad risky, but there's enough there to like that I think the Stars have a real potential, big defenseman on their hands that can really do a lot with here. Certainly somebody who's not going to give you a ton of offense, but he did put up 33 points in 62 games this past season. Certainly, like I said, some raw skill there that certainly needs to have some more development time, but a nice project here for Dallas if it works out. Number 19 selection belongs to the Minnesota Wild, and we have them taking a left shot Czech center iceman Yuri Kulich, who's 6 feet tall, 172 pounds, number 13 overall in the European list of skaters available in this draft. Certainly a player who's a good skater, makes a lot of smart plays, really well known for his solid two-way play, but I know many scouts, especially later in the season, did make more comments that his offensive game is really coming along. So instead of calling him a two-way guy, it might be more of a case where he's more of an offensive center who's pretty good defensively. The offense seems to be sticking out a little bit more here. It makes sense here for the Minnesota Wild that they could use a player like him in the next few years. Next up, at the 20th selection, we have the Washington Capitals, and I have them taking a Russian-born player here in Ivan Mironishenko. Now, it's been a tough year for Mironishenko. Ended up being diagnosed with a significant illness here in Hodgkin's lymphoma, but obviously, that does hold a good recovery rate, so he should be able to overcome that. But on top of that, he's got the whole Russian stigma attached to him as well. But I think a team like Washington, who's had a lot of success with Russian players like Alex Ovechkin and others, will take the chance here on a player who could be a real nice player for them in a few years' time. He's got a real nice blend of power, skill, and compete level, can play a heavy game, he's got a great shot, not afraid to drive hard to the net, and I think long-term could be a really good fit here on the wing with the Capitals. Next up at the 21st selection, we have the Pittsburgh Penguins. We have them selecting another American-born player, Isaac Howard, who's a left winger, born in Wisconsin, obviously 5'10", 182, so he's not a huge guy by any means. He projects to be more of a middle six winger at the NHL. Certainly a guy whose scouts were kind of, I guess you could say, encouraged the fact that even though he's not huge, he kind of developed a little bit of a, what you call a greasy element to his game to kind of fit in, but he certainly has a high-end skill, I wouldn't call it elite level skill, which is why he's projected to be more of a middle six guy. Obviously somebody who could maybe even develop into a decent two-way player with speed and kill some penalties for the Penguins down the road. Selecting at the 22nd spot, we once again have the Anaheim Ducks and another American-born player, this time Jimmy Snuggerud, the right winger, who's 6'2", 186, of course, a second-generation NHL player born in the state of Minnesota. Certainly somebody who's looked upon as being a potential sniper. Like, he has a really good shot. He's a really good goal scorer. Was more than a point-per-game player in the national teams program this year. To me, he's a good fit in Anaheim. If you look at what they have there, they're pretty strong with the prospects and the young players down the middle. He could be a potential second-line scoring right winger, in my opinion, and be a real solid, skilled guy that fit in there well. So we'll see. But to me, he's a good spot here for Anaheim. Selecting 23rd overall, we have the St. Louis Blues and another American-born player, Rutger McGroarty. Now, McGroarty is 6'1", 200 pounds, left shot centerman. Born in Lincoln, Nebraska, as a player who's got a real competitive player with strong leadership abilities. He can score some goals, decent playmaker. The problem is his skating is probably his weakness, and it does stick out a little bit more than many of these other first-round type talents. If you can get by that, there's lots there to like. Otherwise, to me, like if you look at the St. Louis brand of hockey and how they play there, if they can get him a good development coach to help him work on the skating, I think everything else falls in line with the kind of player that they would want for their, probably a second-line player for them down the road. At 24th overall, we once again have the Minnesota Wild, and we have them taking Brad Lambert, of course, who is part Finnish, part Canadian. Of course, his dad's Canadian, his mother's from Finland. Been playing hockey in Finland. Been one of those players that's kind of had his draft stock fall a little bit when the World Juniors were taking place in December, January, before the tournament was shut down. He did have a real good start there. You can see he can drive play and has to have a lot of skill, but has had some inconsistency issues, you could say. But with Minnesota having multiple first-round picks, to me, he's a good project for them, and I think would be a good spot. He can play junior hockey in Canada next year, and might be easier for them to keep an eye on things and work on his development. At number 25 overall, we have the Toronto Maple Leafs with the next selection, and we have them taking Swedish winger Liam Öhgren. Now, he's a left winger, 6'1", 190 pounds, had a pretty solid year, putting out 58 points in 30 games at the junior level in Sweden, but did have an opportunity to play 25 games at the SHL's highest level here, which is, didn't put up a lot of points, but that experience is going to be huge for him. Certainly somebody who's got you could say a shoot-first mentality, but has been working on being more of a playmaker as well, which is good. He's a pretty good skater, gets around the ice well, pretty strong for his size, well-built. There is some questions over what his offensive level will translate to into NHL, so it might be more of a hard-working middle six guy, but either way, there's lots here to like and could be a good fit with the Leafs. Selecting at number 26 overall, we have the Montreal Canadiens, and we have them taking Quebec-born centerman Nathan Gaucher, who's been playing for the Quebec Ramparts in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. He's a right shot center with really good size, 6'3", 207 pounds. You could say he's got NHL size, skating, and strength right away. The one areas that he needs to work on is probably his offensive creativity here a little bit at his size and strength, getting around junior age defensemen. One-on-one is where he drives a lot of his offense, which is not as challenging for him at this point. So there is some debate over how well that will move to the next level, trying to get to the NHL here. So certainly he'll have to be a little bit more creative, have a little bit better vision, and involve his teammates a little bit more. But it'd be interesting to see how the rest of his junior career unfolds and a little bit of time in the American Hockey League. But the Canadiens could have themselves a real good size, two-way centerman here down the road. And of course, he's French-Canadian, which we know they're fond of as well. Selecting at the 27th overall selection, we have the Arizona Coyotes here. They're going to take a defenseman this time around. Right shot D, Ryan Chesley, another U.S.-born player from the national team, 6 feet tall, 187 pounds, Minnesota-born. Is one of those players on defense that does a lot of things well. Has drawn some comparisons to like a Ryan McDonagh type. Not to say that he's going to be as good of a long career as McDonagh's had, but just the kind of guy who actually puts up decent offensive numbers. But you just don't always think of him as being a real solid offensive defenseman. Like he does a lot of things well. But he put up 29 points in 59 games for the national teams program this year. Certainly there's lots of like. Some draft rankings have him a little bit higher here, but I think he's going to be more of a later round, first round pick and could be a good option here for Arizona. At the 28th overall selection, we have the Buffalo Sabres. We have them selecting right winger from Slovakia, Filip Mesar. Now, he's 5'10", 172. Projects to be probably more of a middle six winger. Some think maybe even a third line spot might be what's going to be best for him. They have a high probability that he's going to make the NHL. I'm just not sure the level of stardom that we're going to see from this player. But he skates very well. He's got decent offensive skills, but he's just not going to wow you. The elite level skill level might not be there to play a top six role, but thankfully for him, he's got a defensive conscience and is a really good skater, so that should help him become a regular NHLer on a third line. With the 29th overall selection, we now have the Edmonton Oilers. We have them taking Swiss-born defenseman Leon Bichsel. Now, he is somebody, to me, that is exactly what the Oilers need on the back end. He is a huge defenseman, 6'5", 212 pounds, left shot, and he has a mean streak, and he's really hard to play against. These kind of players are critical to being hard to beat in the playoffs, and I think it's something that a lot of these teams are missing. I think he'd be a great option here for the Edmonton Oilers for a big guy. He moves well. He certainly gets around the ice well for his size. He's clocked in here at 212 pounds, but some have him as maybe being even higher, closer to 220 to 30 pounds. So it's hard to say exactly here based on those different weights depending on where you look up this player's stats. But he's certainly a big, strong, mean, throwback defenseman that's tough to play against and can move the puck and skate well. So to me, this is a great pick for Edmonton. Next up, selecting 30th overall, we have the Winnipeg Jets, and I have them taking American-born defenseman Seamus Casey. Now, Casey was a player born in the state of Florida, 5'10", 162. He shoots right. He's a player that, depending on where you look at the different rankings across the league for this draft, I've seen him ranked anywhere from mid-20s as to the 40s and 50s in some cases. I think he's going to be a late first-round pick. He could end up going in the second round, though. He's one of those guys that can really, really skate. The edge work is phenomenal. Really gets up and down the ice well. Obviously not overly big. He does defend well as well, which goes well for him, but some feel that his offensive abilities and breaking up the puck might not translate as well at the NHL level, which is why some ranking systems have him going a little bit lower here. But I think he's a good project for the Jets. With the 31st overall selection, we have the Tampa Bay Lightning, and they will be selecting Jagger Firkus. I absolutely love that name. He's a centerman, right shot, born in Alberta, played his junior hockey for WHL Moose Jaw Warriors. A player who I think is going to have a pretty solid NHL career. He may not be a first-line player, but he's a guy that will likely make it and be more of a complementary piece. That's my opinion. But he's a really skilled kid, really smart player, has a knack for finishing. Like I said, he's not overly big right now, and that's going to go against him in the short term. But he was the MVP at the top prospects game, the CHL, which is certainly quite an accomplishment. He's got great vision, great hands, great awareness, and just an overall real offensively gifted kid. If he can get some time to develop and put on a little bit of muscle, I think he'll be an excellent option for Tampa in a few years' time. 32nd overall selection, we have the Arizona Coyotes, and we have them selecting right shot centerman Owen Beck from Mississauga in the OHL. Certainly Owen Beck is the kind of guy right now who is known as a really solid offensive player. He put up 51 points in 68 games this past year. I'm sure he's only going to continue to build on that. He's a really good skater. Certainly has pretty good offensive skills, decent size, and should be a good addition here to the prospect pool that Arizona is building. So those are my selections for the first 32 picks in the first round of the 22 NHL Draft. Of course, as always, I want to know your thoughts and opinions on my selections. Let me know who you think these teams will select, and we can discuss further down in the comments. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.